TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Blurson at Blursville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich in Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Winning Time, the rise of the Lakers Dynasty. Season 1, because it just got picked up for a Season 2. It is not the mini-series I thought it was. Dribbling on the court, as he does... Ladies and gentlemen, the slam dunk master, the Birdman, Larry Bird, Jason Teasley. How do you do, sir?
How you doing, man? Doing good. Really enjoyed this series, actually. Kind of caught me off guard how actually good it was.
So I tapped you to do this because, one, especially at the time, not so much anymore, but at the time I was looking for some other stuff to do that wasn't in our usual wheelhouse, and I, as the resident jock, I guess, of the Radulich in Broadcasting Network, I was like, okay, I bet Jason would. When I saw that Adam McKay and HBO were doing this Lakers series, I was like, I bet Jason's going to watch this. I bet Jason will really like this. I bet Jason's going to want to talk about it. Let me get out ahead of this and pitch it to you. And you were like, yeah, I'm in. So, but I have to ask, one, like, how big of a basketball fan are you? Do you follow like college basketball? Do you follow professional basketball? Who are your teams? If so, all that.
Back in the day, I guess you could say, I sound old saying that. Back in the day, I was a huge professional and college basketball fan. So a lot of this era is my wheelhouse. I was, 80s. Early 90s, well, all the 90s, I was an NBA fan. I watched NBA basketball a lot. I watched more college basketball than anything when it comes to basketball. So yeah, I related a whole lot to this because, the Magic Bird eras, the Jordan, Kareem, all that, Dennis Rodman, when he came in the league, Isaiah Thomas, the Knicks dynasty, should have been dynasty that never won a championship. I was all in on that. Some of my favorite players, Dominique Wilkins, was in this era. So, yeah, I was a big NBA fan during this growing up because I played sports. I was a huge basketball fan. Basketball was my primary sport in life. So I resonated with this a lot. Growing up, I was a huge Duke, which I still am a Duke fan. And I was and professionally, I was an Atlanta Hawks fan because of Dominique Wilkins. I hated Jordan.
Who was the really short guy that could jump like 10 feet in the air that played for
Spud Webb?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, Spud Webb. I hated Michael Jordan simply because he was Michael Jordan. I respected his talent. I hated him as a person. And after the Chicago Bulls documentary came out, I hate him even more as a person. Love his work ethic, hate him as a person. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this was really fun. And as you pointed out, I thought this was a miniseries, which it was not. It's a seasonal series. So that kind of threw me for a loop because up to about the third episode, I was like, this is going really slow. How are we going to get to the entire dynasty?
Yeah. I thought this was, as I said, I really thought this was a miniseries when I first researched it, I think it was. And then they were like, no. We're ending with that first season championship win. So it's from Jerry Buss to the end of the finals, but there's still more championships for the Lakers to win, more rivalries that they're going to have. So I guess there's more story to tell if they wanted to, and I guess now they do. This must have done well enough on HBO to warrant that. For myself, we were always a music and movie household. Sports was not huge, but there are certain, as I like to tell people, just because something may not be your thing, there are things that are big enough in the culture you can't get away from them unless you are actively trying.
Right.
Magic Johnson was one of those people for me. Like, I remember I played basketball with my friends who didn't. One of the easiest sports to play in any neighborhood across the United States and the world is basketball, because all it takes is the only other one being soccer, which just takes a ball. With basketball, you might not have open fields to play football or whatever, but there's a hoop somewhere. There's someone, or someone puts up a ring of some kind against some sort of piece of wood and nails it someplace, and you have a basketball net. So I grew up playing basketball too. Wasn't very good at it, but I played. And I was at least tangentially aware of who Magic Johnson was. I knew he played for the Lakers. I've heard Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I've seen Airplane 2. It's one of my favorite movies. And I remember, like, in the early days of video games, like, there was, what was it, like a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2 video game? With
Magic versus Bird.
Yeah, I played the shit out of that game. So I was, like I said, I was at least somewhat aware of the importance of this era, these people, and, and the rivalry between the Celtics and the Lakers, just if nothing else, through that video game. So I was interested in this. Also, when I found out who was working on it, this is an Adam McKay jam. And my kind of last bit of table setting before we get into the series proper, how much of Adam McKay stuff are you familiar with? Like, have you seen Don't Look Up?
No.
You haven't watched Don't Look Up yet?
No.
Okay. You need to watch. That's on Netflix. You need to watch it as soon as possible.
Okay.
How about Vice?
Nope.
The Big Short?
Nope.
Really? Jason, do you not watch movies? Or do you only watch Velocipaster? Which, by the way, somebody pitched that to me the other night. They were like, have you done Velocipaster yet? And I'm like, yeah, Jason Teasley. He's to blame.
Yes. No, I mean, I watch movies as I'm getting ready to watch 2 movies back to back today, I think. But I mean, I kind of have a niche. Mm-hmm. It's either really bad B movies that me and you review, or sports movies, or big action movies. I don't really go for. It's very rare that I go off the beaten path.
So the style in which this is filmed must have taken you by surprise, because I when I realized this was Adam McKay and I saw how this was being shot, I saw the very stylized cinematography. I was like, oh, this is so Adam McKay. But if you don't have a frame of reference, how surprised were you that there was so much breaking of the fourth wall, changing in cinematography aspects, like very purposeful use of like grainy footage?
The whole breaking of the fourth wall caught me off guard, because the first time it happens is when he's driving in, and I think it's like basically they're shooting like a promo video for the Lakers, and then I realized, no, this is the style we're going with. I liked it. Took me back to this is going to sound funny. How Saved by the Bell used to do it, and how Zach Morris always broke the fourth wall. But when he broke the fourth wall, and when the fourth wall was broken, it was adding to the story. It wasn't like a huge exposition dump. It was giving you context of what was going on, how, the perception, and it was really cool. And the switch to the grainy footage and everything, I really liked. I thought this was very well shot. There wasn't very much, I guess, cinema aspects that I can complain about. Some shots kind of lingered when they didn't need to. But overall, I loved how this was shot. I loved the story. How it started out was very interesting, because it starts out with the end of Magic's career in the cold open, and when he gets diagnosed with HIV, AIDS, and just kind of what he's going through. That first initial reaction, which, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to when you got the news you did for the first time, just kind of that.
To be clear, you're talking about when I got diagnosed with cancer. I have yet to be diagnosed with HIV. Just want to make that
clear. Well, yeah. That's why I said when you got the news you did, I did, just kind of that shock and awe effect of like how everything just abruptly changes.
Yeah. So I want to I brought it up because I wanted to point out that Adam McKay has a very distinct style. Some other stuff that he's worked on in terms of television. He's also the writer and he's also the director and executive producer on Succession. He was the director, executive producer, and writer for Funny or Die Presents. He was the director and executive producer for Eastbound and Down. All right, so did you ever watch Eastbound and Down?
No.
Okay. But Jason.
I did watch a season of Succession.
That's a sports show, man. That's like
softball
thing.
I'm not a Danny McBride fan.
Okay. I can't talk to you. Anyway, Adam, so like if you ever going back to his movies, which are more relevant to the conversation, Don't Look Up, there's a lot of the same thing. There's changes in like aspect ratio, there's changes in style of cinematography. There's a lot of breaking of the fourth wall. Adam McKay definitely has a very pointed perspective on things. Like you never walk away from an Adam McKay project and go, I don't really know what that was about or what he was trying to say. No. Adam McKay hits you over the head with a dead fish. And his style is very distinct. The same thing with The Big Short, which myself and Robert reviewed a few years ago when it came out. It was 2015. And we both liked it a lot. Like I remember The Big Short being one of my favorite movies of that year, and what a year it was. Go back in the archive and check out the other direct we reviewed that year. But it was again like trying to explain the financial collapse of 2008 in a way that doesn't have people's eyes glaze over is a feat in and of itself. So he would do things in the movie like trying to explain not dividends, but whatever the word it was, I can't remember it right at the second, but where they would take loans and then bunch them together and then chop them up. There was
hedge funds?
No, derivatives. So it's like trying to explain what a derivative was, which was in large part of the foundation of what broke apart that caused the collapse. So the way that he does it is he cuts to Margot Robbie in a bathtub. And she's like, well, no one's going to listen to, and like they actively say, no one's going to listen to us explain what a derivative is. It's dry and boring. So here's Margot Robbie in a bathtub to explain it to you. And now you're interested because Margot Robbie's smoking hot and she's naked and she explains it and she's like, all right, fuck off now. And that's funny, and there's a lot of that in The Big Short. So anyway, so back to the Lakers here. I want to start off talking about the Jerry West.
Oh,
okay. Because I remember in our group chat you've brought this up now a couple of times. So let's just deal with it right from the beginning. So Jason Clarke, of Skynet fame from the Terminator, plays Jerry West. Jerry West was a player on the Lakers. He was a coach at the beginning of this. He's the coach, but he quits, and then he kind of sticks around as first through the transition to the new coaching team, which takes up a large amount of screen time over the first couple of episodes. And then he kind of hangs around as like a consultant. He is portrayed in the show as somebody who is foul-mouthed, short-tempered, passionate, overly committed, opinionated, and generally not a great person. But it's not that he's a villain as such. He is portrayed as somebody who is almost obsessed with getting the Lakers in particular to a championship to the exclusion of all else, including the relationships around him. And you had some insight into that, Jason. You talked in our group chat about like, I can see why Jerry West apparently is now suing, because it was like, this is so wildly inaccurate. I don't even know what to do with myself. This almost constitutes libel. I'll address that in a second, but I want to pitch it over to you about the real Jerry West as you know him to be and your reaction to how he's portrayed in the show.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a little place called Logan, West Virginia, which had one of their most famous, predominant basketball figure is actually Jerry West's best friend. Willie Akers and Jerry West are really good friends. I've met Jerry West on a couple of occasions. A kid from Logan was being recruited at West Virginia University, where Jerry West played, and with Willie Akers. So there was that connection, and he's originally from West Virginia, right outside of it's Cabin Creek, West Virginia. He grew up in a very poor, economically stifled area, and his basketball was his way out. I've met, like I said, I met him a few times. One of the nicest guys I've ever met to have the stature of. Definitely huge basketball knowledge. And watching this, it was really cringy to me because the interactions I've had with him and everybody that I know that's had with him is like this really nice individual. But this shows him in a light where he's a complete douchebag asshole. And it's a very stark contrast. So yeah, it was kind of really odd for me trying to distinguish and try to wrap my head around, well, is this how he really was? And is this a front, or are they just portraying him like this? But I mean, you have to think he is the logo of the NBA. I mean, that's how good he was. They adopted his likeness to be the logo of the NBA, and it's mentioned in the series. But it's really weird. And when I seen all the reports that he's suing, I can understand why.
Jason Clarke, I think, does a great job with whatever character he's given. It's reading a little bit about HBO and Adam McKay's reaction to the real Jerry West. They were like, we changed things for dramatic purposes. It is interesting because this is a dramatization. A dramatization is not a documentary, and even documentaries have a perspective that's not always the most accurate. So I don't know how I feel about it, because on the one hand, having now watched the entire 10-episode season, certainly his character does bring a dramatic tension to the show. He's sort of an explosive element. You know, when you first meet him, there's a lot of the first couple of episodes are just dealing with whether or not they should even draft Magic Johnson, and whether or not Magic Johnson should leave college to go play professional basketball. There's a racial element to it. There's a commentary or a meditation on how we treat high school and college athletes. There's, in terms of the racial element, it's expressed through the rivalry between Magic and Larry Bird. Larry Bird is white, he is favored. Magic Johnson's black, he is appreciated, but not nearly as favored as much. And for Jerry West, he's like, I don't see the value in Magic Johnson. I don't want him. And then we need to talk about Jerry Buss, who's played by the great John C. Reilly, who is fantastic in this.
Oh,
I cannot say enough good things about John C. Reilly, just as an actor in general.
Yeah, he actually shows his range of acting, because there's some dramatic moments in this, like with his mother and stuff.
Yeah,
that you actually see that he could play those roles. And you see of course, the comedic side. I mean, he is hilarious. But just the range of emotions he has to go through in this, and the relationship with his daughter, the relationship with his mother, he's a doctor coming into a unknown.
Well, he's a chemist. Is what he is. He's a chemist who made money making missiles, and they took that money and he put it in investments. Those investments in real estate paid off in dividends. Those dividends accumulated to where he could purchase the Lakers, which, when we find the Lakers in this era of history, they're on their ass. They're not winning games. They're not winning championships. The league, they talk about this, which I thought was interesting. Again, not a basketball historian, so I didn't know that in the late 70s, early 80s, basketball in and of itself, the NBA was a losing venture. Like when you think about the NBA now or the NFL or Major League Baseball, these are three powerhouse companies. These are Fortune 500 companies. They make in profits billions and billions of dollars per year. To think that back then that it was a losing venture, they were the league was on the verge of shutting down. They think they said in the show.
It was on the verge of collapse.
Right.
The whole entire league.
One of the things the show talks about, which I really, really like, especially as like a marketing historian such as I am, is how the philosophy at the time was, we're going to present a thing. That thing should generate ticket sales. Those ticket sales will give us profits, and sort of this like tacit realization that you can't just put a thing out there and expect people to come. People get bored. People lose interest. So we have to make it a spectacle. You can't just go see wrestling. It has to feel like a rock concert. It has to feel like a happening, like an event. You can't just go see a basketball game. These basketball players have to be stars in and of themselves. This has to feel like an event. So like so much of they say it in the show, and I think it's great. They're like, we're gonna combine like a rock show with this. The Disney World with this and this and this. And they're like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? And then there's a lot of time spent on the recruitment of cheerleaders.
Yeah, and you could attribute the pageantry of the NBA you have now to the Lakers of this era, because before then, you see the rise of the Laker girls, which is probably the only thing that female sports related and cheerleading related and stuff. The only thing that is above them is the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. The Lakers girls, who have, when we meet one of their most famous alumni in this, Paula Abdul, she helped form the Laker girls. And just the pageantry, the over-the-top experience is all contributed to the Lakers and what they deem as Showtime. When Magic was there. And it was just, and they went from a very, and they explored this in there, they went from a very stagnant style of play to basically what is considered run and gun. It's a lot of fast breaks. It's not a lot of setup offenses. It's a lot of high paced action. And you get embraced in that, and you see them building on that and how it's impacted the league as it is today. And it's great, and it's nice seeing that, because like we discussed, the league was on its ass. It was ready. They was looking at everything, anything and everything. And it reminds me, going back just a sidebar here, it reminds me back when, if you ever seen Semi-Pro, where they have like the back, it was the ABA had like if we break 100 points, everybody gets corn dogs, or at halftime somebody's going to wrestle a bear, stuff like that, because people that would draw fans in.
I was thinking about the arena football movie, Kurt Warner. The arena football atmosphere of like, this is what brings fans in, is that family friendly entertainment venue. It's not just the football,
right? And you have these perks a lot. Minor league baseball does it. It's what minor league baseball is built on, is these family nights. These I can't think of the word exactly, but it's these perks of coming to the game.
Yeah. So running all the way back to John C. Reilly as Jerry Buss, the league's on its ass, the team's on its ass. He comes in, he puts all of his money in, gambling on making the Lakers financially sound and rehabilitating there's sort of this tacit belief that if we can get the Lakers up and running, the whole league will benefit. A rising tide lifts all ships. But this story, what is this series about? It's about how we got to that point, at least in the beginning. It was about getting the coach that's going to change the way the game is played, that makes the game more appealing to more people. Which, just a real quick thing, you touched on it, but I want to ask you a very pointed question. In wrestling, there was a way of doing it where it might not have captured the interest. Like, we're trying to show my son matches from the 80s and in the early 90s. He's not into it because it's, wrestling. But that changed to the Attitude Era, where it was 3 minutes instead of 10 minutes of wrestling. It was 2 minutes of wrestling, followed by a pie in the face and chair in the head and a stick in the ass, and then someone flashing their boobs. That he's much more interested in, and the whole world was much more interested because the Attitude was a boom era for a variety of reasons, many of which I just said. As a basketball person, do you follow sort of the same thing with, like, yes, you made it more exciting, but you dumbed it down in such a way? That's the impression I'm getting, that it is dumbed down in such a way that it's not really basketball as we know it.
Now, early basketball I can't watch. It's boring.
Really?
It's really stagnant. When the tide started shifting here with Showtime, is their boom period. That's when I started enjoying basketball, because you had the fast pace, you had the better athletes, the faster pace, and I contribute this like a kind of parallel to hockey. If you actually just watch a hockey game, it's boring as shit.
Right.
You watch hockey for the fights.
Sure.
No, I mean, that's serious.
Well, no, it's funny, because my wife has suddenly become obsessed with hockey because one of her teacher friends likes hockey, and so my wife, trying to find interest in a personality of her own, has now decided she likes hockey too. And I came home one night, and she's kind of, right now the Avalanche in the Lightning, Tampa Bay Lightning, are involved in the Stanley Cup Finals. So she's very invested emotionally in this. And I happen to have walked in, and this really nasty fight breaks out. And I could see, like, her whole demeanor change. Like, she's not a combat sports person, but boy, was she into this hockey fight.
Yeah, and it's like NASCAR. You don't watch NASCAR for the race, you watch NASCAR for the wrecks.
Yeah.
Because that's the excitement. That's the adrenaline rush. Right. So, and that's what this is that more high pace is the adrenaline rush and the shot in the arm that basketball needed. Does
take away from the true, like, I think about boxing, everyone thought Pacquiao versus Mayweather was the most boring shit ever, but, like, boxing fans were like, yes, but that's what boxing looks like, as opposed to, like, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury 3, which was the best fight of last year. It was also not so much looking like a boxing match, so much as it was a parking lot brawl. Anyway, I want to talk about the series. I don't just sort of a 30-minute rant about sports. So much of what Jerry is doing is trying to change the legs of the stool of the Lakers are all broken. They need a new coach because Jerry West quits almost immediately. They need new players. That's what the story about Magic is about. They need to rehabilitate the Forum because it's a building, it's kind of falling apart. They need to figure out what other attractions they're going to create so people want to come to a Laker game, win, lose, or draw. And then, of course, they have to get this team to a place where they are winning. That's the most important thing. So that's what the series is about. John C. Reilly, I think, does a really great job of playing Jerry Buss as a flawed person, but somebody, he's flawed in that he's kind of like a horn dog. Well, he's a little bit of a car salesman. He's, but I think in earnest, he wants this to succeed. Like, this isn't Major League where he bought the team because he wanted to see it fail, or whatever his reasons were. Like, he's genuinely interested in trying to make it all work. And, he has, there are some uphill struggles. Initially, when he's trying to buy the team, he almost gets taken. There's a lot of scenes of him struggling with the banks and paying back loans and things like that. But then you also see, I think he genuinely is portrayed as loving his daughter, but this is the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And, women had only gotten the right to vote 5 minutes before that. It's such a layered show because, again, you're dealing with sports history, you're dealing with racism, you're dealing with classism, you're dealing with chauvinism. All of these things are there. And credit to Adam McKay and the writing team for, I think, handling something that has a lot of bite to it, but deftly. Like I never felt the show was preachy. I felt the show was a window into that time period, and that time period had a lot of shitty things going on.
And it was handled very delicately. It wasn't, you wasn't beat over the head like everything, especially and just to touch on this real quick is I can't remember her name right off, the marketing director, which I think is fantastic. The conversation she has with the daughter during the Game 6 finals, and she's like, because everybody's talking about, even Buzz talks about his son. He wants her to show the sons around to see which one's worthy taking over and being help running the team. And she's like, and she just feels like disheveled and pushed aside because she's done all this work. And, just that little talk and, it kind of hits home and you have that emotional tie. And that's really hard to do in a sports atmosphere, is to have a real emotional feeling that you have to see play out.
All right. We have to talk about Magic now. We have less than 30 minutes left, plus plugs, and we haven't talked about basketball. So let's talk about the guy who plays Magic Johnson, who I don't think I've ever seen him before. Quincy Isaiah doesn't even have a hyperlink in the Wikipedia page. He is as big a part of this as John C. Reilly's Jerry Buss. The guy has charisma for days. I can see it. Casting of Magic, since a lot of the show rests on his portrayal, is very important. Obviously, if he's not working, I think a big part of the show doesn't work. I don't know. Again, I did not watch a lot of Laker basketball back then, but I'd have been 4 or 5 at the time. But at least this portrayal, Quincy Isaiah, I think does a fantastic job of playing the character with a lot of charisma. I like the fact that he goes on a journey himself of being a bit more selfless. His relationship with the guy who plays Kareem, Abdul-Jabbar, was a sight to behold, really. They draw on each other like magnets and pull each other away from their more self-centered and negative behaviors. You have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is portrayed at this time as being somebody who is doing work. He's putting up his buckets. He's doing the job he's supposed to do, but he's not emotionally invested in anything that's going on. He's carrying a lot of anger at the societal racism that's going on at the time. The frustrations of being a black man in this era of the United States. But, the tacit realization that basketball is his job, and to one degree or another, he likes doing it. So he shows up, but there's not an emotional commitment that really pushes you over the edge until Magic comes along, and Magic points a lot of this out to him in his own way, and he has to kind of move more towards where Magic is. Meanwhile, Magic is this really young kid. He comes over, he gets humbled by, I can't remember the big fellow's name. But they're at the party and they play one-on-one, and he's made to look.
Yeah, it's the starting point guard for the Lakers at the time.
Yeah, so he's humbled by that because he comes over and he's the big superstar. One of the things that Magic points out is I have this rivalry with Larry Bird. Larry Bird makes X. I should make X. I'm just as important, if not more. But you're black, so no. And then he comes over and he was like, "Oh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be." And then he has to sort of go through this growth of, do I go back to school, or do I rise to the challenge and try to better myself in the situation? And ultimately, he decides to stay and do that. But there's also him, struggling with being the superstar versus being a team player, and recognizing that it's not always about him; it's about the team. Again, rising tide lifts all ships. So I thought all that was great. The only time I fast forwarded through the show is with Magic's personal life. Boy, and that's just a personal thing. That's not the show's fault. I think, focusing somewhat on his personal and love life, I think gives the show needed flavor. You understand this is a guy that's going to get HIV later on in life. You kind of have to understand he, likes to put his dick in women, lots of different women, which is fine. I just wasn't interested. I didn't care. And the women and the actresses playing those women are just fine. I just don't give a shit about their perspective at all. Like I get it. And after the first couple times I saw it, I was like, every time later on, as I'm trying to finish the series in time for this review, I was like, gosh, I don't care about any of this. Fast forward. The stuff about basketball, the stuff about the business end of this, the John C. Reilly stuff, that all stuff, that all were things I was interested in. Magic's love life, not so much, but I'll kick it over to you. What did you think of his portrayal? Was it like the Jerry West thing where it's like, no, it's not so much, or no, this is pretty dead on?
I'm wondering if this kid is actually one of Magic's illegitimate children. Because he looks like Magic. I mean, this casting, just the look that he brought to Magic was phenomenal. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that, they cast him because he's an illegitimate child out there, because he has all the features that Magic did. His portrayal, this thing rested on his shoulders.
Yeah.
If like you said, if he didn't pull through, if it was shaky with him, this whole thing falls apart. But I think he did a great job, especially with how much of the story he has to carry. The Kareem side, I love the guy that they've got to portray Kareem. And it does show the rocky, a better word could be found, but a rocky relationship that him and Magic had, because Kareem was the MVP of the league. He was what the Lakers were built around. An offense completely goes through him, and to the point where he even makes a comment. He said, "I'll get my 30 and 10 and I'll be done." And they pull up a score sheet at the end of a game. I think he hits the game winner in it, and he goes, "Well, I'll be damned. He got his 30 and 10." And, that's just Kareem was phoning it in a lot in the first half of this. And then he sees that it's going to take, if they're going to succeed, it's going to take him and Magic working together, to the point where they get their first win of the season. Magic gives him a hug and he says, "I've got 82 more to go." And it plays out a little bit further because Kareem gets hurt right before game 6 and he can't travel with the team. He can't play. He actually gets hurt in game 5, but he's ruled out for game 6. And he has an emotional talk with Magic. He says, "Well, you owe me one more hug." And, you see that transition because Kareem did not want anything to do with Magic. He's seen this young brash kid coming in that's going to take his spotlight.
I want you to finish, but I want to point out that Kareem's point of view about can we as Black people not be a little more serious? Can we recognize where Black people are in this country, and we have so much further to go, and not be so flip and vapid about the existence of Black people in this country? And Magic's like, okay, but life needs to be lived. Why are you so angry all the time? I like the fact that there's that internal debate in the show between two Black men and two different perspectives, because I think it's very real.
And I think that plays out in one scene. And the struggle is when Kareem realizes that, and it's like an aha moment for Kareem. They're at a Christmas party or something at Magic's parents' house.
Yeah.
And Kareem is sitting there, and Magic's father comes over and starts talking to him, and he goes, "Why does he smile all the time?" And he said, and him and his dad have the exchange because they seen the racism,
right,
that Magic really hasn't got to be a part of. So it's like a generational clash, is a good way to put it. And and Magic's dad's sitting there talking to him, and it's like Kareem is just sitting there looking at Magic, just being this carefree social butterfly, smiling and everything, like he's never had to experience the trials and tribulations.
Do you not
that
know what
Kareem
it's like to be black in America, you fool? Why can't you be more serious about this? And that is a great scene. There's a lot of great scenes in this show, but that scene between Magic's dad, and I actually want to talk about the scene between Magic and Magic's dad earlier in the show, where he was like, "Please stop telling me how to act around white people. You have no idea, just none." But yeah, that I'll let you go back to it. But that scene between the father and Kareem, where Kareem's like, you can see a little bit of jealousy, like why can't I find that level of happiness in existence? Why must I ruminate on how shitty it is for the vast majority of, because I think Kareem also realizes that if he wasn't a big time basketball player, how much harder his life would be because he's black.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to realize this does deal with racism. There's racism in America. I mean, hell, it's 2022 and you still see racism in America.
Where?
Everywhere.
On this show, as a matter of fact. Damn it.
Yeah. We talk racism a lot. But it's resonating with it because Kareem just sees how hard he has had it as a black man, going through the racism, growing up in the racism, seeing the hate and everything. And Magic's just this big smiling goofball that doesn't take life too seriously. And right. Kareem just can't wrap his head around, like, don't you understand that we have to struggle? And Magic's like, yeah, but if we're great, they can't deny us if we're great. And that's kind of, you start seeing that relationship start budding and transitioning to Kareem kind of softening and Magic kind of hardening, and you get that kind of perfect alignment where their personalities mesh and they take traits from each other and build each other up.
Yes. So it's really nice. Just real quick, I want to go back to early in the show where Magic goes to the negotiating table and they want to offer him X amount of money. He feels it's substantially less. It's certainly less than than Larry Bird is making. And they're like, well, you're not Larry Bird, which is essentially, again, racism there. It's, you're not a blonde-haired white guy that America is currently obsessed with. You're the really talented black guy. And it's like, but I beat him. Like, I better. Like, does that not count for anything? And the answer is, it's not really. You're still not white. Sorry. I think Chris Rock made that very same joke where something about like wanting to be white in America, and I'm rich already because black people just have it so much harder, even when you're wealthy and you're talented. In any case, there's a conversation that takes place between Magic and his father in the hotel, and Magic is sort of, and rightly so, he's hurt by the experience. Nothing like being reminded that because of the skin color you were born with, you're less than, or at least believed to be so, even when you're a, gifted and talented super athlete. It's like, yeah, but you're still black. Sorry. Take your place in the pecking order now and do it willingly. And Magic's really struggling with that because, again, there's an air, especially at the beginning, and you touched on it. The word is entitlement. There's an air of entitlement in Magic's character. I did all the things. I'm loved. I deserve more. And it's like, okay, now work in the real world and see how things operate. Yeah. And he's like, and that's part of what makes him want to go back to school. It's like, maybe I don't want to be here. Maybe I don't want to be a professional NBA player right this second because I'm not being elevated the way I feel like I should be. And he says something, and I don't remember what it is that sets his father off, but his father's like, I have worked among white people without being a gifted and without being a gifted athlete. Schmuck. Don't tell me how to act around white people. I had to survive, lynching attempts and shit like that. It's like, it's a really great scene. And I like the fact that Adam McKay and the crew of writers who worked on this show really bring out those. I think it's one thing to talk about the differences, the cultural, philosophical, political differences between white and black culture in America, but then also dig a little bit deeper and look at the internal struggles among black people just themselves. The class, the class debates, the debates over blackness, what it is to be a black person in America, in and of itself. I like the fact that the show takes time to deal with that black people are not Borg. They too have their own internal debates over how black people should be in America. And it's not always a pretty looking debate. It can get ugly. You see it between Kareem and Magic. You see it between Magic and his dad. You see it between Magic and a lot of the players. They're not on the same page politically, philosophically, spiritually. And, the show is about finding that common ground, which I really, really liked. Real quick, we don't have a lot of time left, but I got to touch on it. How accurate was that portrayal of Larry Bird?
It wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Larry Bird's a dick. When he was a fierce competitor, but this was right, and it was kind of tongue in cheek.
Mm-hmm.
I think they played him because there's been so many stories about Larry Bird. Like he would just walk into, he would be warming up and he would just look at a player and be like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to drop 40 on you," and then he'd put up 40 before the third quarter and check himself out the rest of the game, and he would just. Larry Bird was, and people don't realize this, probably one of the most prolific trash talkers when it came to basketball. There was a 3-point contest. I can't remember what year it was. He just looked at the other competitors and said, "Who's coming in second? Because I'm not even going to take my jacket off." And he went out. He went out and won it while wearing his warm-up jacket. And he was very cocky and very angry. And the relationship between him and Magic was portrayed as an intense rivalry because Larry Bird never got over the fact that Magic beat him for the NCAA title. And that was the chip on Larry's shoulder. And it was a friendly rivalry. They didn't really hate each other, but there was a very intense competitive rivalry between him and Magic. And I think that they dramatized it way over the top, but it brought a needed element to the story to kind of make it lighthearted. But I hope they actually explore the deep rivalry that was there because of the NCAA championship.
I've more or less covered. There's individual characters and subplots in this, but if you're into sort of the minutia of wheeling and dealing in business in professional sports, there's a lot here. If you're just looking for sort of that Succession or Billions kind of family / business drama in a television show, there's a lot of that here. Sally Field, quick comment about her, is a fantastic actress in her own right. Does a great job as Jerry Buss's mother, who's struggling with onset dementia. She does a really great job, and those scenes between John C. Reilly and Sally Field are fucking heartbreaking. Those are rough, especially towards the end. But that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. Any last thoughts? Anything you wanted to touch on, Jason, before we get out of here?
Just that you really see the start of the Pat Riley experience in
LA.
Christ,
I forgot to talk all about that. Yeah, really quick. So first of all, that scene where the coach is riding his bike and then goes ass over tea kettle and takes his whole face off. That's gross. Did that really happen? Did he really like fall off his bike?
Yeah, he really had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury.
Oof. Well, that sets up Jason Segel and Adrien Brody. Yeah, Adrien Brody, who plays Pat Riley, and then Jason Segel is Paul Westhead. I remember Pat Riley because they named a video game after him, and so it was funny to see this because I didn't realize how he started. So there's a fair amount of time spent on the rise of down and out Pat Riley. I didn't realize there was such a roller coaster ride of coaches and coaching issues with the Lakers. It adds to the drama of the show. Again, accurate? Is that how it went?
Yeah, it was pretty, because when Wes leaves, it's like 3 weeks before training camp starts. So it's a shitstorm because you have to have a coach. So then they bring in Westhead, and that group, and you're just like, and everything is, and that adds to it because you got a traditional way, then you got Westhead bringing in this, because he was an assistant in Portland that had a basically more up tempo speed, so trying to transition that in, getting a new coaching staff in, new player philosophy, everything. So yeah, it was a shitstorm. The Pat Riley thing is, I laughed because, yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that he was a really good NBA player. He did win a ring with the Lakers as a point guard, and he's like just in a shit show to where he goes out and plays a pickup game, gets his nose broke, which is kind of funny thing because throughout his career he never got his nose fixed. It's still crooked, and they just kind of a little tongue-in-cheek thing how he got his nose broke, and just to see how he is being more or less brought into the fold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how accurate to the character Adrien Brody plays Pat Riley, and they don't. And like I said, Pat, he doesn't really come on to the end, and the drama is you have Jason Segel's character who's sort of caught in the middle. You know, the original coach there. You keep saying Westhead. Who is the coach that actually gets?
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's Tracy Letts. It's Jack McKinney.
Yeah, McKinney.
So McKinney gets injured. Westhead and Reilly end up taking over for a while. They start winning, but McKinney is cleared to come back. And now it's, well, do you stay with the coaches that got them as far as they did, or do you go back to the coach that you had originally? And that's part of the drama of the show in and of itself. And what I liked about it was almost a lover's quarrel, and Jason Segel's character is just caught in the middle. But again, I don't know how accurate any of those portrayals were or how accurate that story is.
Yeah, it's one of those things that probably was dramatized, not because it wasn't really touched on a lot. It was kind of hinted as another plot point.
When does Pat Riley take over as the permanent head coach?
83, I believe. I think it's 83. The 83 or 84 season.
So it's not for a while yet.
Yeah, it's not. It's not for a bit. He takes over in 81. He becomes the head coach in 81.
Okay. And what year are we in right now?
79.
Okay, so it's a 79 to 80 season, and then there'll be one more season, I guess, with Westhead and Reilly, and then I guess Westhead leaves.
Right.
Okay, interesting. And Pat Riley was the coach for the Lakers for how long?
I think 12 years.
That's my last comment on this. I really expected a Chiron to come up at the end to explain like what happened to the Lakers after this inaugural year, and it just ends. Knowing that they're going to do a second season, I could accept it a little bit more. But when I thought this was a mini series and that this was the end of the show, and it was weird to me that they didn't summarize what would go on to be the Lakers dynasty. I was a little shocked by that.
Yeah, he's the head coach till 90. He leaves in 90. He leaves in 90. And then he goes to the Knicks, and that's so yeah, I'm glad they're doing this as a series because there's a lot of stuff you still have to explore, and bring into the fold. A lot of personalities that the Lakers had, a lot of transitioning and stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm sure we'll do season 2. No,
we won't.
Yes, we will. I've got it on my schedule.
I'm cutting back 2 days a week.
Well, the season 2 is probably 2 years out, so you've only got the schedule out for 18 months, so we can put it on there.
You can talk about it with Evan Bevins. right. Speaking of Evan Bevins, so that is our show. Check out all the rest of what we did this week. Myself and Robert Winfrey reviewed Everything Everywhere All at Once, Spiderhead, and The New Father of the Bride. And then we also reviewed Lightyear and Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Last night, we dropped our Lordy Skeletric Dinosaur review. Next week, we've got the final review in our survey of queer cinema. We're looking at Benedetta, Brokeback Mountain, and My Own Private Idaho. Jason will be back along with his wife to review The Black Phone and Elvis. We'll have a review of AEW and New Japan Forbidden Door. And in theory, Chris Bailey, myself and David Wright will be reviewing Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2. So that's what's going on here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Please like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube if you enjoy us in video format. Jason, go ahead and do your plugs and let's get out of here.
You could find me over at Mosaic Media, where I am a co-host on From the Cheap Seats with Tyler Louder. Also, check out Mosaic Media for all their content. You got the Tyler does a podcast on the MTV's The Challenge, which is really fun and interesting. If you're a fan of that, they also cover an arena football team, which is really fun. A lot of player interviews and insights to that. So yeah, definitely check out Mosaic Media for all of your media needs.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on our Season 1 review of Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. For Jason Teasley, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.